Okay, so quick tutorial. A while ago, or actually a couple of days ago, I was watching this tutorial from Dapper Dino, and it was basically just going over key bindings and making a keybind manager in Unity. You can find the tutorial on his channel. I'll leave the link in the description. Um, but basically, what he goes over is how to use scriptable objects so that you can save the data that you're trying to use. That way people can go in there and change their key bindings. Um, I have this script right here, which is the scriptable object, and I got all of my key bindings set up. Um, so basically what you want to do, you want to create a C# class, and then change the modal behavior to scriptable object, and then set the file name and menu name up here. Um, After you do that, you can come in here and right click, go to create, and you can create you know your objects that you've made. So once you have the script done, you can come up here and create that. So the thing that wasn't going over in this tutorial that a lot of people could benefit off of, because basically all he did was set the keybinds, and then went ahead and changed them over here. But one thing he didn't get around to was showing people how to create a menu for it, as well as how to detect whether or not that key is already being used and whether or not it will conflict with said things, well, said key that you may have pressed. So that, as well as I feel like it's a good opportunity to go over things like custom classes so that you can do loadouts and things like that, and it works well with a lot of things, whether you're creating characters. Scriptable objects are come in handy so much. So I'm gonna show you the basics of what I have right here, and those um how to change those values and things that you have on the scriptable object from um, from like a menu standpoint and from the code standpoint, so that you can go ahead and create your custom classes or whatever the case may be. And then I'll show you the keybinds. I'll try to remember to put timestamps in there just in case you watch this video and you went over the keybinds and now you want to learn how to make sure they don't you know inter um, conflict with each other when it goes to change, and to tell whether the keys are the same and make the menu. So I'll see if I can remember to do those timestamps. So basically with loadouts, you want to create a scriptable object, which I have a loadout scriptable object, and then I have 10 of them in this folder. I have 10 loadouts, and then I also have a loadout manager. So my loadout manager holds all of those in its instance. It goes through each scene. I kind of want to carry my character's data through all of the scenes. So I make the instance, don't destroy and load, simple. Um, so I'm gonna go over how to change said things, and it's pretty much the same as what I have right here. I have an enum, and when I'm in my menu, right, I haven't made my menu script just yet, and I may go over that with you. But in my menu, basically how you want to approach these things is saying, when I click this, what do I want to happen? When I click this, what do I want to happen? And then think of the parameters and go through it like that. So making loadout, if you're looking at a loadout screen, say you have your list of loadouts, and when you click one, it becomes the one that you want to edit. So when I click my loadout, I want to select one, right? I want to select one of these enums, but it's not that easy, because when you're using UI, you cannot select a enum or change the enum from, you can't pass a enum as a parameter. So it's not like I could click it and say, hey, select the melee enum, or this secondary enum. You can't do that because you can't pass enums as parameters when it comes to that. So you have to do it through code. So in my menu script that we're going to create a little bit later, I would I would put a function in, and then on that UI element, it would be of course it would be a button. That that loadout that you're clicking on would be a button, right? So when you click that button, what you will want to do is have your menu script and have it reference a function to select that in this class itself. So how I went about that is to say the click slot, which is basically just the loadout, right? Well, my loadout is a little different. When you click my loadout, it doesn't really select a loadout. It just, well, it clicks it, but then it kind of like well, let me show you. I forgot it was over here. Basically, with the loadouts that I have, right? That these 10 are just copies of these, right? So with my loadout manager, this is what my menu script would be referencing. So when I click a loadout, right? Depending on which one it is, I'm going to be passing an integer. You can pass a string, whether you want to name the loadouts, but I'm gonna pass them as integers. So when I pass, say I click the UI and it goes to my menu, and then the menu has a function that says, hey, select this loadout, and it will call this function right here, right? And it will pass in that integer. Whether it's 1 through 10, I have a switch case here, so whichever one gets clicked, it sets the selected loadout to these. And this one is actually very universal when it comes to when you want to have people change their loadout during a match or when they respawn. So it kind of works both ways. So I'd select that integer, and then it would set selected loadout to 1 to whichever one is ready, right? And when the loadout comes up, after this happens, basically when this is called and the loadout is selected, the menu would come in here and get the selected loadout that you had, which is just this. It would get all of this information. What's your primary in that loadout? What's your secondary? What's your melee? All of that good stuff. So with that happening, now you have a whole new set of UI. You would have your primary button, you have your secondary button, you have your melee button, and then when you click those, that's when you want to select a slot. So my loadout manager would handle that. So when you click the UI and it says select slot, my menu script would say, hey, slot select. That means it will select a slot. It will go to that selected loadout that you selected, and it would say slot select, and it will select whichever slot. And in my loadout, you have the selected slot, and slot select basically says, hey, it would pass this when you click it. The UI would not only call this function, but it would pass the a string. So when you click on that UI and you set up that button, what I'm going to do, you could use an integer if you want to. You can really use any parameter that you could get in there that you would like, that's supported by UI. That's the easiest way I found to do it. But I would pass the word primary if I'm clicking on the primary button. I would pass the word secondary if I'm clicking on the secondary button. Melee if I'm clicking on the melee button. If you want to add perks or abilities, you would pass the perks and abilities word string when you click on that UI element. And then that will come in here and have a switch statement based off of the word that you put in, technically the button that you clicked. And what it would do is it will set the selected slot to whichever one you clicked on. So if you clicked on primary, that is now your selected slot, and then it changes the UI from there. It will bring up the primary gun that you currently have in one side of the screen, or however you want your UI set up. It will show the gun that you have, but it will also show a list of all of the guns available. And that's just something you'd have to do with your UI. That's not something you do for the changing. So you'd have your list of guns that are available, that are unlocked. And when you click the button for one of those guns, that's when the loadout, you pass it to the loadout manager and you say change the gun that's there. So the click gun then goes to the selected loadout that we were just looking at. It will go to your selected loadout and say change gun and pass in whatever gun name is attached to that UI element. So the UI element that holds the guns holds the gun names. The ones that hold the slot, like primary, secondary, and all of that, holds the slot name. And then the loadout UI elements hold the loadout, the name of the loadout that you're trying to get. and then we pass those and we manipulate them not only through here to figure out which one of these we're using, but it'll come in here and change those values. So when you click change gun, it's gonna say, it's gonna ask, if you selected the primary slot. It's going to base it off of your slot. The reason I separated these was so that there's no confusion as far as which gun it's supposed to be getting. I didn't want to do a thing where all of the guns were one thing and we're just going in there and picking the one with the same name. I don't want it to get too jumbled up. So this is like the easiest way for me to, separate it and, make sure I get each and every one individually, to reduce glitches. You don't want somebody carrying around three primary weapons. So I found it best to separate those. So in change gun, basically it asks which selected slot. If the selected slot is primary, then it'll run a switch, and based off of the word that you put in, the name of the gun, I just have them set to gun 1, gun 2, gun 3, and all of that. Based off of the name of the gun, it's going to take that and set that your primary weapon to that gun, right? So, and then at the end, as a default, it'll break if it's not in here. So if it's not a primary gun, it's not, well, if the gun name doesn't exist, it's not going to do anything. But you got your primary, it'll go based off of the name, and it'll set your primary weapon in this loadout as the one that you just clicked on, right? And then I also have another switch statement for the secondary, right? So that'll handle that. Really, this could have been one big switch case. I just, used different ifs. I didn't embed it in. You can embed switch cases because I actually have them embedded in one of these around here. I forgot which one it is, but basically that's how you kind of want to handle switching things. If you want to switch between menus, just have something that manages it, and then use your menu to reference that, and then pass it into the scriptable object, because the scriptable object isn't going to be up all the time. The scriptable object is just meant to be in the assets and not something that's public in the inspector, that because the inspector isn't going to be something that people can see when you publish your game, so they can't go in there and click it and change it and do any of that. So that's the reason for the extra step for passing that parameter. That's why we're passing it from the menu to here to the scriptable object rather than directly there. So this is always going to be running. This has an instance. That way, whether you're in the main menu or you're in the game, you can change your loadout, or you can pick your loadout. Really, if you didn't want to have people change their loadout, the reason why I said this is universal is because of the fact that say you don't want people editing their loadout during game, right? And you just want them to strictly be able to change it, but in the actual game, in the actual menu, that's where you change it. What you would do is, all you would do is basically is change the menu around, basically, or disable your edit button. If you were in like your regular menu, if you see Modern Warfare, for example, when you're in the menu, I believe there's no edit button next to your loadout. You just click it and it takes you in there, right? But when you're in the match, there's an edit button next to your loadout, next to the loadout button. So you could kind of do something like that, and the reason behind that is because when you press the loadout button, the loadout itself, right? Mine is going to be set up differently. If you want to set it up this way, you can. You could either have it to where you have one button, and when you click the loadout button, it'll automatically take you in the edit, or you can have it to where it just sets it as a favorite or your selected loadout when you go into the match, and then have an edit button next to it. That way you run two separate functions, basically. So, not two separate functions, but you have an extra line of execution to do when you press edit. So if you for mine, I know I'm gonna have just the loadout as a button, and when you click it, it'll automatically set it as your selected loadout, but it's not going to bring up the edit menu. The edit button is going to not only select that, but also change the UI and then populate the UI with whatever is in here with your selected loadout. So That's basically how you change things when it comes to um, scriptable objects. And you want, if you want to do it to through menus and let the people that play your game change those things, that's kind of how you want to handle it. You just want to have that scriptable object. If whether you're using enums or whether you're using booleans, any of that, you can do that. um, Basically, you just in your menu, just have your menu, have it reference whatever is managing that scriptable object, and then just change it from there. All right. So, and then it sucks to have to pass, strings all the time, because I can't pass enums, and enums are a lot more efficient for me because they make everything a lot easier. Of course, this could have been a list of game objects, but I really didn't want to put game objects in here because a lot of them are attached to the character. There's certain ways, there's certain areas where you can do that and certain not, but that's just how I prefer to handle it. Now, as far as key bindings go, um, I'll show you my key bindings and how I set up my key bindings. Be warned, if you haven't watched Dapper Dino's tutorial, I suggest you watch it before you look at this code. But my I like to keep all of mine separate. Like, I keep all my player scripts in here. These are my loadouts. I'm gonna have interactables in here, like scriptable objects for that, and then AI, of course. But I'll show you my key bindings. So you got key codes. I have a lot of key codes in here, but I'm actually gonna show you how to set up a way to toggle your aim. Doing bulls like this and having checkboxes is pretty much easy because it's just a checkbox and you just toggle these things. So that's pretty much straight. We don't have to worry about that. I don't think I set up my toggles though. But besides the point, you get your key codes listed, and then we go the same route that we did for the weapons. But if you want to detect whether or not the key exists, you want to have another thing in there. How we had selected loadout, and it changed based off of whatever you clicked in, and it kind of replaced it, right? So I added duplicate key in there to detect. Now, on my end, I did not, for the general, all of these I wanted all of these to stay the same, because no matter if you're using a gun, a melee weapon, or you're in a vehicle, you're going to be able to use these functions, right? I did not want anything to interact with that, and I didn't want any of this to interact. Yeah, I didn't want any of these sections to interact with those, but these can be independent on their own. Like, if, for instance, if you want heavy and light attack, if you want heavy to be your left mouse, and you want light to be your right, but also you want your aim and your fire to be left and right, you can do that because they are completely separate, and you're not shooting a gun anyway. They're independent from each other, so we're not worried about that. But what we don't want is, if you're using, let's say you want your interacts to be left mouse and you want your disarm to be right, and then you have these two set the same, it would conflict, because these can be run at the same time. This is just your standard movement. This does not change. I mean, you can change it, but this does not, stop being executed or stop being listened for. This is always going to be your controls for this. So I didn't want them to interact. So if you're fine with just all of your keys being different, cool. But I wanted to give people the ability to use the same keybind for different weapons, rather than this being all the way across the keyboard, because you already use these keys. So kind of how you can press W to walk forward, but you can also press W to drive, things like that. Same way we press space to jump, but we can also use space to vault or climb, things like that. So how I went about mine is, I put all of the general keys, which is this section, into one list, and then all of the gun keys and melee keys and those keys. So we're not going to focus on that right now. We're focused on changing the keybinds. So I'm going to show you my input manager, right? So my input manager is pretty much the same that Dapper Dino had. It checks which key As I said, if you didn't watch Dapper Dino's video, I suggest you watch it because I won't be going into as much detail on how to do the key bindings as much as he did. That one's pretty important to watch. I'm just going over the advanced part of changing it and making sure that there are no duplicates. So we still have the same mode of, pressing your key and holding your key, these two separate functions, and checking the key bind. This is what you'll learn in his video. This portion and this portion, and also, of course, this, right? Well, I believe it. No, wrong one. Oops. This. That's what you're going to get from his portion, which is basically just setting up key binds and making sure that the game knows that you change the key bind and they act accordingly. So the difference I have here is this input manager. I have an extra thing in the function, right? Come on. I have a bool called changing key. So in my menu script, right, I would basically put a UI in there for each of the buttons, each of the key bindings that I have. So most games, you click on the key binding, it brings up a little window that says, hey, press the key that you want to change this to, and then you would press it, right? So when you press that key, it's going to activate changing key, right? Which the changing key bool really is just there so that the script can start, the input manager can start listening out for all of the different key codes that are on the keyboard. So, or the ones that Unity has. So for each key code, key, and get values. This is important because you can't really loop through all of the key codes without getting the values of them, right? So what that'll do is it'll listen out for each of the key codes that Unity has available, and if you press any of those keys, one of those keys that's in there, it's going to constantly keep looping through the keys until you press one, and then what it'll do is it'll go to the key bindings and then check if that key is available, and we're going to go over that in a second. So yeah, that's pretty much how that works. And then when you come in here, as I said, these are the separate keys. It returns a new list of these keys so that they're separated. So that's how we check the availability to make sure that they are not conflicting. And this one's actually pretty lengthy. So let me see. Let me actually see if I can collapse that a little bit more. Oh, I hit my controller. Okay. Oh no, baby. Okay, that didn't work. So let me minimize these and go by these one by one. So basically, most games tell you if you want to clear a key, you can press a certain button, and if you want to cancel changing the key, you can do that. So I put this little line in here to make sure you don't press backspace or escape. That way, we know that you're actually pressing a key that you want to use. If you press backspace, it's going to say the selected key, which is the one that you pressed. As I said, it passes that parameter, right? Check availability key. When you check availability, that key is now your selected key, right? Where did I put that? I forgot where I put it. Anyway, forget it. Oh yeah, when you press backspace, that selected key that you pressed, right, is none now. It's none. So that's that reference because that's in here. So when you press it, you populate this with whatever key code that you had, whether it was A, L, W, that's the one you selected, right? And then if you press escape, it'll say clear key. Cancel key, which is basically just this is just gonna call back to the menu and then disable it and turn it off. So let me see. This key function right here is the one that you're pressing. Remember that. So if it's not equal to backspace or it's not escape, it'll do that. So if the one that you pressed is not equal to backspace or escape, it's going to take, let me see, it's going to take that and check inside of this one is a little different. Let me just say that this one is a little bit longer than the rest of them because, as I said, I didn't want them to conflict. So if you look at this, general keys, selected keys, if the key that you pressed, right, the selected key, is inside of, hold on. Oh yeah, okay, there it is. If the selected key, I'm forgetting. So let me rephrase this. Let me go back. The selected key, I'm sorry, I confused myself. The selected key is the one that you click on. Let me say that. The selected key is the one that you click on in the settings menu. So when you click on like drive or one of these, any of these, that's what the selected key is. That's the one you're trying to change, right? That's the one you're trying to change. So I forgot where I said that somewhere. I might not have said it. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry, my menu script is going to directly handle this one because this is, I forgot, this is the input manager. This isn't a wait, no, wrong one. Key bindings. This one's actually going to come in here and directly say that change this. Hopefully, I think, or I had it set somewhere. I forgot where it is. But anyway, when you get here, it's going to set changing key to false because of the fact that it's no longer listening for the key that you're looking out for. You already sent it over. So after you click on, oh, there it is. Okay, I knew I wasn't going crazy. Yeah, this is the function that I was running when I click on the key. When I click on the button, right, you know, the UI elements show the different controls that you have. When you click it, it's going to call this change key function. I believe I put that in here. I didn't. That's the one I'm missing. Okay, so let me just, I think I might have deleted it by accident earlier. Change key, and then this is just gonna get the instance of the instance of the keybinds. It's just gonna go keybinds, and then it's gonna change the key, and then it's gonna pass in whatever it's going to pass in whatever key you click, and that's just going to be based off of the button, the same way we did it with the loadout, and it passed in the integer of which loadout. Same thing here. So it's going to pass in the key that you're putting in, which is just kind of like fire 1, fire 2, or whatever you're clicking on. So it'll pass those, and then it'll set the changing key to true. So when that happens, then it's going to start searching for whatever key you're putting in, right? Whatever key you click. Then it's going to come in here and check the availability. So it'll stop searching for the key. And then if that key that you pressed is not equal to backspace or escape, it's going to say if the general keys, which is basically, you know, the separation. This is how I had mine. If the key that you clicked on to set, the key that you're trying to change, basically, if that's inside of general keys, then it's going to loop through each of the different list of keys to make sure that it's not in there, right? So this right here, well, I'll take that back. This right here, this is looping through each key code that is inside of the script itself. That's in each of those lists, right? Every control that's in each of these sections is being put into this list. The reason behind that is because I need to loop through them all, and you can't really, well, you can put a for each inside of for each, but I didn't feel like doing it. Okay, and then after it puts them all into this list where all of the keys are showing up, and this is only for, I only did all of them for this one general one, because if you're changing a general key, I didn't want it to get in the way of any of these. That's why we're doing it for the general key. So we're going through all of the different lists and saying, hey, for each key code that is in all of the keys, if that key is equal to the one that I pressed, then the duplicate key is equal to the one that that was just referenced, which is the one that the loop stopped on. So after that, then the new key is equal to the key that we pressed, right? But it doesn't change the actual key code yet. It says warn clear key, which warn clear key just says is just going to be pop up on the menu and say, hey, do you want to change that key? It's duplicating this. We're just going to pass in the name. We're just going to pass in whatever key is has the same code, right? And then when you press yes, it's just going to come back in here and say that selected key, which the selected key is the one that you clicked on, which is basically saying the whichever one of these is now equal to the one that you pressed, the new key. And then the duplicate key gets erased and it sets the key code dot none. Okay, so that's how you make sure there's no duplicates in your entirety. If you want to make sure there's no duplicates in the entire, in all of your code, in all of your keys, then you can just do that part and call it a day, right? But I wanted to make sure that the other ones didn't intersect with this either when I'm changing these. So if the key that I click on is in, this basically says if the key that I click on is one of the melee keys, if the one that I'm trying to change is the melee key, then this one just puts the melee keys and the general keys into the conflict keys, right? And then it does the same thing about checking if the key is a duplicate or not, and then if it's not a duplicate, then it'll just set it it'll just change the key. The reason behind that is because I didn't want, not only did I not want these conflicting with these, but you don't want these to be the same thing anyway. You don't want them to be able to, click the same, you don't want people to be able to aim and shoot at this, like with the same key, basically. So otherwise they would kind of cancel each other out. Same with gun keys. I didn't want gun keys interacting, conflicting with the general keys or the keys that it has itself. So these three are pretty much identical. You don't want them conflicting with the general keys or their own keys. So it'll check if any of these, like if I'm changing accelerate, it'll check to make sure none of these have the same key code, and then none of these have the same key code. If they don't, then it'll set the key. If they do, it'll warn me. It'll ask me if I want to change it through the menu, and then if I say yes, it'll clear the duplicate key, and then it'll set the new key, right? So that's how you change. That's basically how you change key codes. It's a lot to try to do that. I mean, really, it's just really, you only need one of these. You don't even need these 4 lists. You can really just create your own like your own little thing down here when you do the check availability, because I just had all of this extra so that they don't conflict. If you're fine with having all different controls, or you may not have that many controls, you can just do that and call it a day. Now if somebody was to want to go back to the default keys, that's always an option. This is where we change that. We set the toggle aim and the toggle crouch, because this one changes between toggle and hold. I'm gonna also show you how to switch between toggle and hold keys. So pause is set back to the original code. These are all the original key codes that you see over here. Wait for it. Oh, there it is. These are all the original key codes that you see right here for my controls. Those are the ones that are default. So basically, you just want to put all of those in there and just say, hey, those are the default keys. So for the toggles, those are just booleans. You can just go to the menu, say, hey, when you check it, it can really just come in here and change it. Well, really, let me see. You can really put it in here, wherever you want it. Just have a function, or have the checkbox, when the box is checked, have it come in here and say, hey, go change it to whatever the thing may be. I haven't set up my menu script yet, so I haven't set the toggles just yet because I don't have those booleans ready. And plus, that's going to be part of my settings menu as well. All of my menu stuff is going to be handled in my settings scriptable object. I'm gonna make a settings one later. I think when I do my settings ones, that's when I'm gonna go full in depth on how to do the whole scriptable object thing. But this is pretty much an overview on how you change those keys. So we went over loadouts. We went over inputs. Now, if you want to change your if you want to have a whatchamacallit, a toggle on your aim, basically, where did I put it? Right here, right? I have a switch statement for everything that has a toggle and a hold. I have a switch. So basically, this input manager, this one is if you press the key, this one is if you hold the key, right? So, and then it checks the key binding, right? So in this portion, it checks to see if you have toggle aim to true. If it's true, then it's just gonna see if you're pressing the aim button, right? So if you are pressing the aim button, then it'll aim. Wait, those are switched around. Wait, never mind. This is the toggle. I'm sorry. Yeah, toggle aim. If the toggle aim is true and you're just toggling, if you're aiming already, then it's going to set your aiming to false. If you're not aiming, it's going to set your aiming to true. Right? That's how toggles work. Since you're not holding it. Now, if you're not toggle aiming, which means your aim is set to a hold, basically it'll just say hold key. If you're holding it, then aiming is true. If you're not, then it's false. Simple. So it's a real simple way to handle toggling and changing. You just got to set the boolean inside of your controls, and that's about it. So it's pretty simple to handle that, and that's pretty much all you want to do, man. That's all you really want to do when it comes to handling your controls. So as I said, if you didn't watch Dapper Dino's tutorial, man, it's a really good tutorial. Shows you kind of a lot of the basics of scriptable objects as well as key binding. It's really informative. So I know this is a really big script to take in. Honestly, if you go watch this video and you come back here, you'll probably fully understand everything that's going on right now because there's a lot. And as I said, this structure when it comes to changing things works really well with scriptable objects, especially like I have this here, selected type, which will just be the enum. We're selecting the enum by string, and then we're going to select the attachments that are inside of that enum. So it works really well when you want to do a lot of different changes that aren't class based, so they work really well because scriptable objects save data. So and then it allows people to change it without having to have the inspector or having to do I wouldn't say too much through code, but besides the point. Yeah, so this is a really good way of handling it, so that way you have everything. So when you make your your scriptable object, just put all of the data you want in there that you want to be able to change. It'll be good for a settings menu, and then just have somewhere to handle it so that you can call it from whatever UI that you're doing. So that's pretty much it, man. That's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything else. Oh yeah, I forgot loadout manager. My bad. So my loadout manager, this has a selected loadout. My weapon handler handles which guns to render. If you want to go a little bit more in depth, if you want to know which guns to render based off of your loadout, grab the loadout manager, have your current loadout, have a variable for the current loadout, which is going to be the one that you pick, and then I have all of my weapons are attached to my character, but they're all disabled until they choose which ones to enable. And then my weapon script is, what handles all of the shooting and stuff. So that's just which one that's in your hand currently. Then you got the string for primary, string for secondary, string for melee. The reason I have those strings in there is because when I come to my loadout, these can't be, the enum can't be passed, so you got to pass the string. So I'm going to be passing the name of the guns, right? So I'm just going to be passing the name of these and the value of those. So the same way we did it in, we say, hey, if it's primary or secondary, same thing. So and then you got the weapon script for, my primary, secondary, and melee, so that we can get the information from those. So on my awake function, basically I just get the loadout manager, the instance of it, because it never gets destroyed. And then our current loadout is equal to the loadout manager dot selected loadout. So whichever one you clicked on last is going to be the one that's your current loadout. And upon start, it's going to set primary to that current loadout, and it's going to set it to the primary weapon that you have in that loadout, but it's going to take a string, which is just the name of that gun. Same thing with these. It's going to take the name of each of those slots, and then it's going to say find those weapons. So it'll find those weapons under your character, because as I said, mine are all attached to my character. So it'll go find those weapons based off of the name, and it'll set my current weapon to my primary weapon upon start. So like when you spawn, of course, your primary is going to be the first one in your hand. And find weapons, what it does is, this basically is, it runs an integer. It goes through all of the weapons that I have, right? This is just a simple for loop. It goes through all of the weapons that I have, and if one of the weapons, if it hits a weapon that's equal to that has the same name as my primary weapon, it's going to render it. It's going to set that game object to true, and then it's going to, the gun model set to true, and then it's going to say my primary gun is equal to that weapon. So it's going to set my primary gun to that, right? It's going to set that. And then also if it's if the gun name, if any of the guns have the same name as the secondary that my loadout is saying that I have, it's going to render that, and it's going to say that it's going to set my secondary gun. So basically it's just looping through all my weapons and finding the ones that are in my saved loadout, right? Same thing with the melee. It'll do that too. So after that, the else if basically says if it's not my primary or the secondary or any of those, then it'll just debug. It'll set, if basically when it loops through each weapon, it has to have something to do. So if the weapon that it gets to, if it gets, say the first weapon is a sniper rifle, right? Say it's a Dragunov, and the Dragunov is not the name of the Dragunov. The Dragunov is not my primary weapon, and it's not my secondary weapon. It is not my melee weapon, because remind you, these gun names are all of the guns that I have, on my character model. So it's looping through those. So if the gun that I get to is not equal to the primary that's in my loadout, or the secondary, or the melee, then it's just going to make sure it's still disabled, right? This will just disable it. This is basically just setting that gun model. It's basically just disabling it and calling it a day. Even though all of mine are going to start disabled, just to reduce conflict. You don't want to have all of them enabled, and then you start the game and then somebody just got every gun in the game stuck in their hand, and you don't want to glitch it out. So I start all of mine disabled anyway, but this just double checks to make sure they're disabled, and it would debug and say, hey, this gun isn't in your loadout, right? So when I have gun name and gun model in here, I don't use this gun script actually. Oh wait, no, this is something else. That's for something else. That's for camos. Basically my where is it? These are weapon scripts. There it is, my weapon script. Basically, this is, the one that handles all of the shooting and good stuff. But it has the gun name in here, which, you would put Dragonov or whatever it is. And that's the one it's referencing. And then the gun model is going to be the actual model of the gun. So that's how that works. And that's just kind of how you pass information through the input manager. Well, not the input manager, but your scriptable objects, and you go change them so that people have accessibility to those things. And it makes it's kind of a balance, because when you change something on one side, you got to do it on the other. Like if I was to add another, if I was to go back to my loadouts, if I was to add another gun in here, I now, like if I put melee 6, I would now have to go in here and add another case for melee 6. You dig? So like there's some backtracking to it, but I mean it's programming. It's making a game. There's a lot of backtracking, and there's a lot of tedious work. That's what a lot of people, that's what some people don't realize when they first get into it, is that sometimes you end up doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and sometimes there's not really too many ways around it. So until they create shortcuts that make it easy, it's not happening. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty much it, man. That's how do your scriptable objects, pass those through, change them, do whatever you want with them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think my next step, I already have, my custom classes in my loadout manager set up, so I can change those. I have my KeyBinds set up, I have my gun set up, I got my animation set up. Like these are pretty coming pretty close to done. Um, let's see. And then if you come to your scriptables, you can, if you want to test them, you can just come in here and change, which gun you have in here, and if you want to add perks and all of that, do that. Oh, and what I was about to do is, this gun is a scriptable object as well. So, actually, where is, I didn't create the menu for this. This is why when you come in here, you see how it says create, and you can create a loadout, and you can create new key bindings. After you write your script, that's how you have to, initiate them. Well, that's how you get them down there. And the reason why mine isn't popping up over there is because I failed to put this in there to create the menu file. So go in here, put that in there, change this to gun, change this one to gun as well, save that. I feel like I'm missing one. I have another scriptable object, don't I? I think I just have loadouts, the guns, and the key binding so far. I'm going to do a settings menu a little bit later. I'm gonna set up this. I think I'm gonna set up the bull toggles in a second, because I don't remember if I checked those yet. Yeah, I haven't checked those yet. So let's just say, let's actually go ahead and do that right now. Because the key, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use a checkbox for my switch between toggling out. I'm just going to have a little kind of like a slider, and depending on which side it's on, it's going to come in here and change it. So public void change toggle, and what this is going to take in, this is going to take in a string, and it's going to take in the I guess the toggle. I guess we'll just call it toggle. And this toggle, if we're going to pass in two things, actually. We're going to pass in the toggle, and we're going to pass in a bool, which is let's just call it state, right? Which is basically just seeing if it's if you're using a checkbox to see if it's checked or not. Also, if you're using a slider to see if slid to the left or slid to the right, whatever you're trying to do. Basically, it's going to take in those, and we're going to do a switch, and in that switch, we're going to take in the toggle. And the reason for the toggle parameter is because, as I said, we can't pass. Well, we can pass booleans, but we can't pass enums. But when you click on it, you can pass the state, but we got to figure out which button you're clicking on. That's the reason for this one, right? We got to figure out, like, if you have a checkbox, we can get the boolean, we can get whether it's true or false, but which one are you clicking on, right? Now, I could separate this and have one for toggling the aim toggle, one for toggling a crouch toggle, one for toggling a sprint toggle, one for toggling a lean toggle. I can just have 4 separate functions and have my menu come reference all of them, right? But the reason I'm not is because I want them to, come in here and, do them one by one, like do them all in one function to make it easy. Um, uh, so now, um, in here, basically what I'm going to do is say if the toggle, the case that the toggle is aim, right? If we click in the aim toggle, if we toggle the aim, right? We're gonna hit our break. If we toggle the aim, we're just gonna go in here and we're gonna get the Boolean state. Or really, what we can do instead is check the state of it. If we toggle the aim, right? If let's say if KeyBinds, I was trying to figure out my reference name. If KeyBinds dot toggle aim then we'll say KeyBinds dot toggle aim equals false. So basically, if it's set to true, make it false. Else, then basically if it's false, then KeyBinds dot toggle aim and set it to true. And if you didn't know, and if you're a little confused, when you're passing a a boolean, if you just leave it, you don't have to say if that bool is equal to true. You can just leave it in there. You can just leave it like that, and that basically means is it true. If you want to check to see if that boolean is false, just put a exclamation point right there. So they're pretty much the same thing. I do it all the time. So basically, it just says if keybinds dot toggle aim is equal to true right here. So if it's true, then set it to false, and if it's not true, which is the else statement, then set it to true, right? So that's for the aiming, and then we're just gonna do that three more times. Oops, just gonna do that 3 more times, but one for the crouch, sprint, and lean. Crouch. And we're going to say toggle crouch, and we can just copy this. Boom. That'll be the toggle crouch, and then you got the sprint, toggle sprint, and then we're going to have the lean, and this is how you change the booleans. Boom. So basically, when you click on the checkbox in the in your menu, it'll come in here and it'll say, hey, change it, and then boom, it'll go through each. It'll pass in the name of the checkbox that you clicked on, and which state it's in, and it'll say, hey, change it to this, yada, this, that, and the other. So, well, really, we don't need the bool state. Now that I think about it, I forgot. We don't. We just need which one it's clicking on, because what we're going to do is, in my menu script that I'm going to do in my next video, I'm going to show you basically our menu is going to be populated by all of these. So if it's set to true, our menu is going to be up there and it's already going to be checked. Same with the keybinds. The keybinds are going to be set based off of what it's set on. So, when you're looking at the controls, it'll say, hey, pause is this is this button, this is this button, this is this button, so on and so forth. So, basically, when it comes to the menu piece, you don't really have to, I'm not doing any backwards population. Basically, anything we're changing is being changed here, and that's it. The only time we're not is if we're trying to let us know something before we do something, like cancel key. We're going to do that. We could just do it here, but it's not like it's not populating anything on that side. You know, it's sending information back. On these regular ones, we're looking for it. So the menu is looking into these to get their information, right? The only time we're giving it information, well, we're technically giving it information, but it's really just taking, the menu is taking the information from us. The only time we give it is when there's something important like this cancel key, and it's like, hey, he clicked cancel, take that menu down, or or whatever menu pops up when you're trying to change a key. So with that being said, that's pretty much it, man. That's how you change your controls. That's how you run the scriptable object. I know that was pretty long, and a lot going on. I know I really wanted to, do a thing where I kind of walk you through it, like most tutorials, but I kind of spent like all day. Like all of these you see up here, I wrote all of these within the past 2 days. Everything you see in this project has been these past 2 days, man. Like all of these. This enemy one is the only one that doesn't have anything in it, but like all of these have just been like the past 2 days. And I've been trying to, get it right and make sure everything's structured. Like I really couldn't figure out to save my life how to do the loadouts, but then I finally figured out how I wanted to do it because I was trying to put the enum inside the enum and all of this other stuff. But I finally got it. So now that I'm more, proficient with it and I know which route I want to take, it's pretty much easy when it comes to the setup menu. As I said, I'm starting with the attachments. The attachments are basically, cool here and my gun. The reason for my even though I have a weapon script, the reason for my gun having a scriptable object is so that it can hold all of the different attachments that you're trying to use. So like the customization that you do on your gun, and also this is going to populate the menu when you're looking at the gun, so you can see what type of gun it is, how much ammo it holds. We don't even need that chamber piece. How much ammo it holds, its fire rate, its round per second, all of its statistics, basically, your muzzle velocity, all of that. And this boolean is basically just going to be something I check inside of that gun, like when I create that. Like if we go in here, let me actually create a gun script, a gun real quick. You see how it pops up right here? You can create the gun now. You can name it whatever you want. So the sprite holds the camo. Whichever camo you're using, it's also going to hold a picture of it. That's what I forgot to put in there. It's also going to hold a picture of it. It's going to hold the name, the ammo type. So this is going to be populated based off of this is going to populate the menu based off of which gun you pick or which gun you're looking at. So this is my next step as far as scriptable objects. I'm gonna finish this one up, and then when I get to the settings menu or anything like that, well, actually when I do the menu, I'm gonna post another one. I'm gonna post another tutorial, and then that'll be more in depth. I may come back and change a few things, but I'm gonna show you how to populate the menu. Well, yeah, populate the menu from all of the different things you have, because right now I have mine set up to where nothing really gets destroyed between scenes. I want mine to be like not to really kind of like destroy anything. I really just want it to be a thing where like all of the things that's being managed, like the input manager, the loadout manager, all of my managers are all kind of like on this script basically. Except for my camera rig should be on there. I didn't add that one in there. my camera, because basically I want my camera to kind of persist between scenes and then lock onto the character, because you know how if you play Modern Warfare, you know how you can see your character walk. I kind of wanted to have a camera there and then transition here so that you don't really have to change anything crazy, but I may change it up later. um, why's my curve manager not in here? I don't have my oh wait, boop, wait, that's the wrong one. Boop. Okay, let me make sure that's in there. But yeah, that's pretty much how it's gonna work, man. After when I get to doing the actual menu, that's when I'll come back. But I'm gonna finish up this here. I'm gonna explain it. I may record it, but I'm gonna explain it, and then I'll explain it in the settings video when we do the actual menu, and then I'll show you how to. I'll walk you through the menu in the next video, so it feels more like a tutorial rather than a rundown. I'd rather y'all kind of walk along with it and know everything. Even though it's pretty long, I'm gonna see if I can run y'all through that. So, good luck. Watch Dino, Dapper Dino's video if you want to, really in-depth look at the key bindings and how they work. He'll go over it a lot better than I did. So, yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one.